with if I start like in general, if you think back on the season, what do you think? Is it positive, negative, thoughtful, or what are you sort of thinking?
I think when I do look back at last year, it's a mix of both, definitely. Like we definitely had a roller coaster of a year. Like there was some pretty good highs in terms of team performances and grinding out results. And then on the flip side, there was some days we really just didn't show up, you know. Some of the positives, like just off the top of my head, is probably grinding out the win there against Tyrone in an Ulster semi-final. You know, we pushed them right to the line and we scored in the last kick of the game, and it gave us a real boost, I think, in terms of togetherness. We were like, if we actually put our minds to it, you know, we can go and we can beat anybody. And then flip side of the coin, you're in an Ulster final and then you don't turn up, and I think the score line, you know, didn't probably reflect too much, but we just did not turn up in the day, and that was definitely one of the lowest points of the season in terms of right, how do we get ourselves refocused for an All Ireland series? Um, in terms of championship, that's the big things, and then the league really followed suit. To be honest, at the start of the year, a couple of really good performances against Louth, grinded out a good. It was a draw against Wexford, just a couple of things, but then kick the ball here and there, and we lost out a couple of games to a point or two, and it's just inches or kick of the ball nearly is just our was the tail throughout the league, sort of when I think back now.
What do you remember what you were thinking at the start of the season? What your sort of hopes were or your ambitions were for this year?
As in this year coming in or last year?
Last year, January, like January, start of 2025,
Yeah, I think like your focus is always the league. I think we're quite good, and the management side of things is always quite good, and like that, like compartmentalizing. Okay, that we're focusing on this. Don't worry about anything else. You know, it was nearly the first half of the league, game by game, and I think we were sort of really hopeful going into the league in terms of we had a good group of players have been there a good couple of years, and then we had a nice sort of varied amount of new players coming in, and we're really hopeful. We wanted to get out of Division Three. I think every team that's in Division Three can win it. It's just that tight. Every team, it's really nip and tuck, and we started well. I think we won away in our first game. I can't even remember, was it Limerick? We won away, had a good win away, and then came back, and I think we lost one or two games, and we won two games in a row. Just really high and low, and the performances just weren't consistent in the league, and that showed then come the end, you know.
you had a change of manager. Like there was Colin come in, but he had already been there before. Like, what is that? Was that a benefit to have somebody who sort of knew but old? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, and I think it was. I think the fact that we had a familiar face, like he had maybe 3 or 4 months under his belt from the previous season. He came in like around championship time, so he knew us as players, and there wasn't that sort of breaking in period last year for the whole squad. You know, the new players that came in had to break in, and he had to get to know them. But for the majority, we knew how he liked to do things, and you know what he expected of us, and vice versa. So it was quite nice to have that last year going into the league.
I think he said he definitely, from when I was speaking to him, he felt that there was great ambition in the squad, and I think from whenever he came in, he'd been told, I think it was Mark told him just the potential for this team, but it feels like the issue with Division Three is it's just too difficult. The quality
Uh,
there is so
it's
difficult.
it's just, you know, Division Three, like every year you couldn't guess who's gonna, you know, go up or go down. Like Division Three is just it's just really nip and tuck, and then teams change. So when you do come to meet them in championship, you're basically playing a brand new team because, you know, tactics change and players change. And anytime we start a campaign, you know, you are really hopeful, and we do have so much talent in the squad. And even going into this year, it's the same. But last year, for sure, and I know Mark was, you know, give Colin the heads up in terms of like push for the max out of these girls because it's definitely there. So we probably fell short in terms of that with performances. But I know like Colin at the end of the year was definitely happy as a squad, you know, how we stuck together. But I think there's a lot now this year. We'll have a few wrongs to put right for sure.
Well, do you think could you think you could sort of outline what you sort of think went wrong, or was there any mistakes or issues that you had in the vision, or is it just that it was not right in the day on those games that you slipped up in?
I think, do you know what? At the start of the league, I think it was a short turnaround from December to January. We started to train in December. And then because of the weather, a couple of friendly games were called off and certain things. And then when we started, we probably didn't have enough games under the belt than what we would like. And we were really still gelling throughout the whole league, and trying to find the right position for players. And it does take nearly a whole league campaign to figure that out, especially when you've got new players coming in. But there's nothing I can really, when I think back, put my finger on. Every girl gave 110%, and we were a really close knit and really committed squad throughout the season. It was just some games were just, I can't even put my finger on it, like that kick of the ball, or just it's just the way football goes. Sometimes when you think back, it's like it's all ifs, buts, and maybe, and you could do that all year, I'm sure.
Yeah, and do you feel like that you were good enough to go up this year?
Yeah, I think like our squad, the depth in our squad, and the players, we've a great mix of old and new players, and we definitely have, the talent, the potential. I don't think we start any year thinking that we can't get out of it. I think if we put our minds to it and we show up and we're consistent, I think that's what we would hope.
Hmm.
Um, Last year and even going into this year, I think it's your expectation every time to turn up, and you turn up every game to win. So
How do you think Coleman were saying to be things about how the league would affect us in the championship, but how do you think it affected you, like the way the league finished to go into the championship? Was it a negative effect or a positive effect or not at all? And maybe was there any annoyance that you didn't go up, and was that did that affect you when you went into Ulster?
I think at the end of the league, we were nearly waiting on other results. And even that, we were like, we should have put this to bed 2 or 3 games ago. If you're waiting on results at near the end of the league, you're just hoping for the best, really. And I think after the league, we wanted to put a lot of the wrongs right when it came to championship, because we knew we didn't show our full potential. Like there was some games we just didn't turn up, and it was so frustrating because we train really hard, and like the intensity in training and the standard in training is top notch, and then when you don't turn up, it's just so frustrating. So I think going into Ulster, definitely we personally felt we had a point to prove in terms of the expectation of down football. We didn't want it to slip, so we were like, we'll prove a point here and go out and give a good couple of performances.
Yes, and how did you think it went? Like, did it go to plan? Where what you hope to achieve in Ulster, did it go to plan? I mean, by that I mean the way you played.
I think again, like I mentioned earlier, the highlight was that Tyrone semi-final. Again, it wasn't perfect. Probably, and Tyrone are probably saying the same. It wasn't perfect performance from us either, but I think the grit and determination and the character of the team was just like tenfold that day. And when you think back to it, it just gives you that you could beat anybody type thing. It's just one of those games where we knew we weren't going to lose, and we hope to carry that on throughout the rest of the championship, and that really gave us a big lift and a big boost. But then, getting to an Ulster final, that was the goal, to get there and retain the championship from the year before. But it just wasn't to be on the day again. Just we didn't turn up, in the performance just inconsistent, and just that's football. You can't expect a win.
How much was it the way you performed, and how much was it the way they performed, or the way you know?
I think, well, thinking back, not that I think about that game too often, to be honest, but um, Cavan, everything fell for them that day. I felt like every score, I'd love to look back on the stats. Like I think they put very few wide. Every ball just seemed to be falling for them. Anytime they were going on an attack, it was a score. They had a lot of turnovers, and then they probably just sapped the energy out of us that way, because the game was so intense, and it was such a hot day. And then we just slowly, I think, slipped away, and they just kept chipping at us. Now the scoreline, I don't think reflected, we'd some really good passages of play in the game and some really good individual performances that we could take away afterwards. And there was snippets of 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there, but as an overall performance, they outperformed us, and that's just, that's just what you're up against, and you can't complain coming off a field when the other team is, outplays you. So.
Yeah, I think Con did say that this quality of teams you're coming up against was very good. Like they were, and they had a big goal. They were really focused on the day. So, but anybody sort of stand out? Do you think that you talked about how the team's changing? Like, do you see the style of play changing because of the new players coming in?
In terms of our team,
Yeah.
um, I think last year, do you know what? We're lucky last year with a lot of younger girls come in, and they bring a lot of speed to the squad. We're very lucky in that sense. We're not short in terms of speed, and we've really good technical players in the squad, really good footballers in the squad, which allows you to have that flexibility to play. You don't have to bank 13 behind the ball every
Hmm.
time when
Hmm.
you're coming up against Tyrone and Cavan. We just went for it. We didn't want to bank, and I think ladies football now, we definitely found it in the league. Even in some games in the championship, teams are just playing that real defensive system, nearly like the men's game 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe. That's the way I think some teams played. But with new players coming in last year, we really had the freedom and the flexibility to change up the style of play because we had that strength in the middle and we had that speed along the flanks. Like, so we were lucky in that sense.
It feels like that was it a couple of years ago the defense was so strong for it down, and then this year the forwards kind of really came on fire. Like it feels like maybe one, but then I don't, I'm not too close to the stats, but that's the way it felt to me. Was that the way it was, or did you think you are getting more of a balance?
I think I'm probably biased because I'm a defender, but I think it's you know what, with the forwards this year, I think there's a lot of them girls have been young players the last couple of years, and they're now finding their feet in that forward position, and they're really gaining confidence, and they're really growing in their role in the squad, and which was so good to see last year. Like Emer Fitzpatrick last year was unbelievable. And she's just really grown into herself. But she's been in there for a couple of years. The same with Neve King as well. You'll probably name half of the forwards who've been in there, but they were just young coming in, and now they're just sort of growing into themselves, which is great. And then defensively, it was a big shift and a big change last year too, with 2 or 3 players leave and 2, 3 new positions coming in, and then that takes a while to gel as well. So I think we had a good balance, but the forwards definitely this year were flying it like.
Do you think that it takes like how long do you think it takes for players to get acclimatized to play in National League football and Championship football? The younger ones. Or is it different? Is it
Uh,
different for per player? Per person.
yeah, I think so. I don't think like one size fits all when you come into county football, like depending again on your age, depending what you've been exposed to in your club. Um, it's really hard, and then everybody, you might be a confidence player and you feed off everybody else, and or you might just be so sure of yourself you'll come in and you don't feel pressure. So I really think it's really individual. It's hard to tell, but usually a couple of seasons, I think, for young new girls coming in to really find their sort of role in the squad. um Now, last year we seen it in the championship. Some of the younger girls just came alive, and that was only over a couple of months. You see them get really comfortable and really fit in, and they were playing to what works for them. But I think it's really individual, and everybody's really different when they come in.
Okay. What did you think of the All Ireland series? Like, I mean, how much did the league and the championship affect, or the provincial championship affect your performances in that?
Um, the All Ireland was probably a funny one. When we got drawn that group, we sort of were like, right, tough, probably one of the toughest groups out of the whole lot, and we were nearly thinking that's going to happen. And we were really prepared. We were really looking forward to it, and we thought, yeah, do you know what I mean? We got to the All Ireland semi the year before last, and we were pushing for that again. But we went down to, was it Westmeath we had in the group?
Mhm.
Yeah, we went down to Westmeath, and we put in a good performance, but we, we just some of the things just didn't go for us that day. We had a lot of chances, and we were creating a lot of chances, and it just didn't fall for us. I think we were beat by maybe 2 points that day, and then that left it up to Tyrone. We had to beat Tyrone then in Park Esler, and funny enough, that was probably one of the best games we played all year, and we were beat. So it was a big disappointment now for sure, because we really thought we could get out of that group, but it was just the way sort of the cookie crumbled last year.
I recall saying how bad luck that was to get that group. It almost seemed unfair the way the system was set up. But it was only one score. It was 2-9 to 110 against Westmeath. That's one score, and down Tyrone where they beat you by a goal, but that's one score. So one score in those two games, either game, like that's it does sort of show the small margins. That's kind of
It's and that's like, I feel like that's a running theme. That was the running theme in the championship, was the tiniest margins, and like, they look, Tyrone go on and win the All Ireland, and it's like how fine that margin is to getting out of a group and winning All Ireland. It's so tight, and the intermediate championship every single year is so tough. And we were again unfortunate, a couple of, free kicks both ways, missing some, conceding some. Again, you could go back and go down to every minute detail, but you drive yourself insane, like.
yeah. The after in the aftermath of the season, do you just did the team just move on? You just say your goodbyes, move on, or how much do you do reflections on it?
Yes, I'm trying to think, the end of last year, we had a get together at the end of the year, and we all give feedback in terms of like individual things and team performances and what we would like to improve on this year. We do that every year. I think it's really important to get everybody's feedback, throughout the year, because everyone has a different experience of the season. My experience, somebody might think it was great, and somebody might think it's absolutely terrible. So we regrouped at the end of last season, and everyone's sort of mindset was the same in terms of fine margins, kick of a ball here, kick of a ball there. You know, just when you think back, it's just you want to pull your hair out, like. But we regrouped it, and we set even goals at the end of last year for this season, and that was God, August probably.
Yeah. How much of a challenge is it managing the players coming in and out and leaving, and because teams are every team's supposed to fluid, like, and how much is that sort of managing that kind of departures and players in and out?
Um, it's definitely difficult at the start. I think last year we had a couple of girls leave, and players came in. It takes a couple of games always to fill that in. I think this year we've had a really big increase of new players in the squad. A lot of people want to come and play for Down now, and that's one probably thing we can take out of the success over the last couple of years. That Down football is really thriving, and people want to play for Down ladies, and that's it's such a motivating thing to keep going and keep turning up and keep the standard high with Down. Um, so it is tough when you've big players stepping out who've been there, for so many years, and trying to sort of fit the sort of tactical aspect around new players and things. But it takes a couple of games to figure it out, and then it's your style of play, and it's the manager's opinion and what they want to do, and you know sometimes it clicks, and sometimes it takes a little more time than what you want.
So there's people. So you think there's an influx, or is there an influx of players coming back in? And there's more numbers coming back
I,
or
I think, yeah,
joining.
like, I know I've been with Down now from since 2014, and there was years gone by where the squad was, you might have had one or two coming in, two or three maybe. Every other year you couldn't even run trials 6, 7, 8 years ago, because wasn't enough people. you know Where now it's a lot of people want to play and there's a lot more interest and there's a lot more people, wanting to put on the red and black jersey. And every year we go out and we always say, and it's probably really cliche, like, but you want to leave the jersey in a better place, like, and you want girls to play for down, and that's how you're going to get better and how you're going to win championships is when you've constantly got, competition coming in and you're pushing each other on, no matter how old the players are. Like, so that's probably a really positive thing we've seen within the county, like in the last couple of years.
Why do you think the numbers are going up?
Um, I think success, probably, the last couple of years we obviously won an Ulster title the year before last. The year before that we won a junior title. I think people see us really competing now. We're pushing teams like Cavan and we're pushing teams like Tyrone, and we want to win All Irelands and it's capable. And I think people in Down see that and they see the potential and people want to be a part of that now, where maybe so many years ago that wasn't really the case. People thought, no, they sort of write you off early, where now I think people really appreciate and want to be involved in the setup. Like, the setup now is so professional and it's came on leaps and bounds, and we are so lucky and Down that we get everything we ask for, in terms of professionalism, and every service you ask for we get, like. So I think that's probably a big attraction to girls now. They want to come and they want to train with the best in the county. So hopefully that's just to keep the way it keeps going, like.
How much is it the club game getting bigger? More girls are playing club football, and then there's more of a pool out there. Is that the case, or not so much?
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember what the number was now, but I do think the ladies' game in Down is growing. Like, I know I was at a meeting, a county board meeting a couple of months ago now, and they read out the couple of thousand members that are registered to the LGFA in Down, and it's like, it's unbelievable. And they say it's just growing and growing every year. Even in my own club, the amount of players that are coming in, even to our senior squad, that are younger because they want to play. They want to push it, even if they're a little bit young. They want to play football, and the underage in my club anyway is booming. And I know a lot of clubs around Down are the same. Anytime you go to a Down ladies game at home, we're so fortunate. The support we get from the younger teams around Down are unbelievable. Like,
What do you think the ambition is for next season?
I think it's just to kick on and just make sure we keep that high standard and high expectation of training. And, we'll obviously probably get a few friendlies in the works before the league starts and try and start that league campaign really strong, because, again, like I said, that Division 3 is so tough. And then you've games and you're playing in the wind and the rain and storms and in January, February, March time. So just probably start strong, I think, would be the main thing. And, again, hopefully we have that good togetherness again this year and really keep those characteristics from last year, with no doubt I'm sure we will. But I think you just have to take it game by game. There's no point in thinking down the line.
But can you not look at what you did last year and say we have to do this completely differently? Or do you say to yourselves, look, we were on the right track last year, we just need to improve the commitment or improve, change the attitude? Like, is there
It's
not?
I know what you mean. If there's just like one particular thing, I think we were on the right road last year. We went away from home, and I think we actually played. There was loads of games called off, and ours happened to be still on, and we grinded out that win. I think it was Limerick, and see, from then we were like, we grinded it out, and we were like, this is great. We can kick on. Everyone was on the right track in terms of like commitment, attitude, mindset. Everybody was on the same page. It's just, it's funny to go back and think, and put your finger on it. Like I said before, a couple of more friendly games in the bag. We lost a couple because of the weather, in terms of they were called off. And that was maybe something that would have helped the preparation a little bit more, especially with new girls coming in. They'd no really feel for inter-county football until the first game,
Mhm.
so hopefully now that, but it's hard to say. It's hard to say when you think back.
Yeah, I suppose I'm asking you about things that haven't even talked about yet with the team. Like, you'll decide what way you'll different change your approach, or what way you'll approach it differently, if at all. But I wanted to ask you just finally, where do you think you are? You said 2014, you've been 11 years. How is your attitude to the game different now than it was when you started?
Um, I was probably really naive when I started. I was really fortunate. 2014, we went and won a intermediate All Ireland with Down. We won an intermediate Ulster title that year. Um, Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't even remember this far back. We were either like in a league semi or a league final that year as well. So I just assumed that was, that was going to happen every year. I thought this is great. So obviously that's not the case. I was really, really fortunate to get in with that particular crop of players. Um, some of the greats that I played with in 2014 that I really looked up to. And then the years that followed, you're like, okay, this is, you need to grind out year after year. And I think my mindset is now you just got to really work hard now and really be 100% committed because every team has now turned into such a professional setup that you can't slack and you can't, do it sort of half-arsed. You need to be all in if you want to win and you want to be winning games. It's every ounce of your lifestyle from December to touchwood August needs to be, county football. And if it's not, that's where you see the kick of the ball and that's where you see little things happen. And it's happened to us, I think, too many times. So probably not taking it for granted in terms of success and winning, just really putting in 110%. Like,
Where do you get the ambition to go again? Do you want to try to compete with the players that you're playing against at the current level and compete with the teams like that, or is it something else that sort of drives you on to keep on going?
probably a wee bit of both. I'm quite a laid back person outside of football. But in terms of football, I'd be very competitive. And I think every year I'm like, I want to do this, I wanna win an All Ireland. I wanna get an Ulster title. I wanna do this. And I still enjoy it and I still love it. So the day I probably stop enjoying it, it'll probably be when I'll call it a day. But I still love it and I still there's so many things I still want to win. And I think that's probably the worst thing at the end of the year because you're thinking, if I don't go back next year and they win, I'm not there. I can't take that chance. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back. So you have to love it. I think, I took a couple of years out and traveled. So I was lucky in that sense. And when I came back, I had was really refreshed. Obviously, that was 3 or 4 years ago now. But I think you have to love it. And I love the competition and I love playing against the best in the county and in Ireland. Like that, I just think there's nothing better.
Do you see any players? Do you see the current squad having similarities to that team in 2014? Is there any star players that were you played with back then? Do you think I can see these players being developed here now, or do you think like that at all?
Do you know what? I've never actually ever thought of that first squad and like the current sort of panel. Back in 2014, my God, was that 10, 11 years ago? In all sports, I think, like even if you look at football, like soccer, the players are so different 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you think of like the likes of Eliza Downey, she played fullback in 2014 and she was just unbelievable, and Aileen Pyre, just all Lisa Morgan, God, Kyla Trainer, you could just rhyme them off just, and I don't know, maybe it's because my age that I seen them like that, you know what I mean? And now I'm older, it's probably hard, but the talent that we have in Down currently is up there with 2014, no doubt. Like we're really, really lucky in that sense. Like we've really a lot of fantastic footballers, like and really committed, and they really want Down to do well, which is the main thing. Um, but I've never actually thought of the comparisons now between the two.